Folks, the American dream moved to Canada. You want to find out what happened? Stick around. Welcome to Balancing the Scales, the Economic Justice Report. This is your host, Vic Bernsdorf, and on today's show we're going to be talking about these three topics. Why America's middle class keeps shrinking, what American expatriates think of America, and why the American dream has now moved to Canada. So, for this segment of the show, I'm going to take my sources of information from MarketWatch.com. I'll be paraphrasing from an article they have. So, let's start by saying middle class incomes in America are stagnant. They've stopped increasing since like 1974. Employment and wages are declining, our middle class children's prospects are declining, and basically American families have to work a lot longer and harder now just to earn less than what their parents earned. Let's watch this video and come back and talk about it.
Politicians on both sides of the aisle talk about supporting the middle class, but in the U.S., that group is shrinking. Pew Research Center data shows that in 1971, 61% of adults lived in middle-income households. By 2016, that number was down to 52%. So what income bracket were those people absorbed into? Before 2000, people leaving the middle class were more likely to join the upper class. But after 2000, the opposite was true. People were more likely to drop to the lower income group. So why is the number of middle-class Americans decreasing? There are several factors. Wage growth has a direct impact on pocketbooks. Since the Great Recession, wages have been going up, but pay rates for the highest earners have gone up faster than others, and the top 1% has seen significantly higher wage growth than everyone else. Then there's the cost of everyday needs. Healthcare costs, like prescription drugs and visiting the doctor, have risen faster than the median income in the U.S. The same is true for childcare, housing, and education. And while plenty of families have stayed in the middle class, a growing number are going into debt to do it. Americans as a whole now have over $13.8 trillion in debt, a number that's gone up nearly every quarter for the past 6 years.
Yeah, and now with COVID, the trends are even getting worse. Look, for its size, the United States has a smaller middle class than many other advanced economies. Okay? Middle-class American families today work harder but earn less money than they did in 1973. American households have pretty much experienced very little income growth in recent decades, especially after the 2009 recession. Wages are flat or leveling off, or even going down in some cases. That means that less and less Americans are going to be better off than their parents. Upward mobility was once a given among America's youth in past generations, right? That's not the case anymore. For those born in 1940, about 90% of children grew up to experience higher incomes than their parents. This proportion was only about 50% among those born in the 1980s. Oh, one more thing. That college benefit everybody keeps talking about you earn $1 million more in your lifetime if you're college graduate than your high school graduate. You know what? That's flattening. Okay, so the cost benefit of a college degree shows that college for some majors may not be worth it. May not be worth the time and expense. So now let's look at a real-world example of family struggles. The New York Times recently compared middle-class families' budgets around the country, but for time's sake, I'm just going to talk about one of those stories. I'm going to be quoting now from the New York Times article. On the lower end of the income scale, for instance, there's a Sheboygan, Wisconsin family of 4, including 2 toddlers. The parents earn $4,000 a month after taxes from both a part-time retail job and a line cook gig job, neither of which offers paid time off or health insurance. This is what their monthly expenses look like. $600 in rent on a 2-bedroom house, $550 in student loans, $800 on groceries and dining out, which includes toiletries and supplies for 3 cats, $482 on transportation, includes 2 cars, one of them which is paid off, and $340 in credit card debt. Their expenses add up to $3,232 a month, leaving them with just $738 as savings or cushion, right? They take turns watching their kids to save on childcare costs, and the children are covered by a state-run health insurance program. But mom and dad have no health care insurance whatsoever. Okay? According from the parents now, we have high levels of stress from juggling our schedules, said mom, Lauren Koch. So there you have it. Non-stop stress due to no affordable childcare, and they can't afford health care at all. Health care insurance, that is. And on top of that, their kids may want to go to college someday. They gotta figure out how they're gonna do that. Right? So now, keep this family in mind as we transition to the next segment in the show. So this next segment I call What American Expatriates Think of America Nowadays. An expatriate is someone who is an American living in another country. Okay? And it's important to see their perspective on what they think of America, having lived in a completely different environment for many years. And as I go through this segment, keep that family in mind I talked about in the previous segment. But let's watch a video clip, and I'll come back and talk about it.
Okay, so the first reason I have is healthcare. In Germany, it is basically like a basic human right to be able to go to the doctor and get the help that you need. And in the United States, apparently it's not. All right, my next point is parental leave. I think that this is super amazing. In Germany, when you have a baby, you get to stay home and you will not have to worry about losing your job. I think that this is incredibly important, and I really, really appreciate this. In the States, wow, is it really a problem to have a baby and then have to try to work? People have a lot of stress about it, a lot of worry about losing their job and not having enough money, and I think it's really nice that the German system recognizes that having a baby is a big deal and you need time off to be able to be with your baby, and you don't have to worry about losing your job or not having enough money, and I think that that's just really amazing. Okay, so next up on my list is free university. This one is massive, and I think it's pretty widely known that in Germany, you can go to university essentially for free. There are, of course, some fees and stuff, but you get a lot of help from the government and from school so that you can get an education.
Okay, that was a American expatriate talking about her experience in Germany, and now I'm going to be paraphrasing from an article from Insider.com titled American Living in England. Here's what I don't miss about the U.S. I was born and raised in the United States, and I had a pretty happy life there for about 30 years before I moved to England. Here are some things I don't miss about my life in the United States. Number one, I don't miss the high cost of higher education in the United States. After 15 years, I'm still paying back my $12,000 worth of student loans after having defaulted on them twice in my early 20s. In the UK, university fees are capped at about $11,000 per year. If you take out loans, you won't have to repay them, get this, until you secure a job with a certain income level. And even then, you only pay a small percentage of what you owe. She goes on to say, I also don't miss the high cost of health care that I experienced in the United States. I'm fortunate to live in a country with a public universal health care system instead of a for-profit system in the United States. In the United States, my insurance plan was basically the same as many Americans, which is just hope you don't get sick or prepare to pay a fortune for testing and treatments. In the UK, if I need it, I can actually afford to get professional care thanks to the National Health Service, the NHS. This allows me to make doctor's appointments, have diagnostic testing, and even visit the emergency room without worrying about going bankrupt in the process. That's the key difference, folks, without worrying about going bankrupt. And she goes on to say, I also don't miss the workaholic nature that's prevalent in the United States. For starters, in the United States, paid vacation for workers isn't even guaranteed, and the average private sector worker gets only 10 days of paid vacation a year. In the UK, many businesses offer workers roughly 20 to 30 days of paid leave per year. Plus, no one feels guilty there in the UK for taking a sick day off or enjoying a week of paid vacation. Okay? That's not the case in the US work world. I can vouch for that. So, the takeaway is, why can't the United States treat its workers in a more humane and civil fashion? It sure seems to me that on the ethical front, the US keeps going backward. In other words, progress in America is only measured technologically, but never humanely. Never in human development terms. Are American citizens, are they less stressed? Are they happy? Are they enjoying life? Which is part of what the show is all about, okay? Even though I talk about economic justice and the American dream, it's really about having the government help its citizens prosper. That's part of the function of government, right? Okay, now, on to our final show segment. In this last segment, I'm going to be talking about how Canadians are better off than Americans. And I'm also going to be quoting and paraphrasing from TheGuardian.com. So just so you know, as of 2019, Canada has the wealthiest middle class of any country in the world. So let's listen to Fareed Zakaria interview a Canadian on this topic, and we'll come back and talk about it.
Gilmore asserts, a former Canadian diplomat. Gilmore is now a contributor for the Boston Globe and a columnist for the Canadian magazine Maclean's. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you have a fascinating collection of data here. You point out that when you look at college degrees, 46% of Americans have them, but 59% of Canadians do. When you look at home ownership rates, 63% American, but 68% Canadian. When you look at life expectancy, 78.7 years in America, but 81.2 years in Canada. So higher life expectancy, higher home ownership, higher college degree, and even more vacation days. So everything looks better in Canada. Why?
Well, it's a bit of a puzzle for us as Canadians because, we look to the United States as being the land of opportunity like most people do. But when you start pouring through the numbers like you suggested, no matter how you cut the American dream or no matter how you describe the American dream, whether it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or a car, a job, and a degree, it's now become easier in Canada. And I think there's some obvious reasons. The healthcare system, for one. We don't have people going bankrupt because of healthcare costs, so our poor parts of the society can continue to thrive. Access to education is easier. There are cheaper degrees. We don't have the student loan problem that you have in the United States. We have our problems, but overall we seem to be muddling through and doing a little bit better.
Okay, so sometime around 2010, Canada snatched from America the distinction of having the world's most affluent middle class. Okay? Canadians' median wealth of about $106,000 is way higher than the $61,000 we Americans have. Okay? And it doesn't stop there. Compared with the United States, Canada has a lower percentage of people with wealth below $10,000 and a higher percentage of people with wealth more than $100,000. Okay? So, why is this the case? Okay? A lot of it has to do with, well, like you've heard the ex-patriates say in the previous segment, well, do with big government programs, right? Big government is really demonized in America because the corporations don't want you to have an easy life. They want your money, okay? So, again, big government getting involved in the lives of its citizenry is predominantly the reason that Canadians have a better life. For example, when Canadians buy prescription drugs, they pay a lot less than Americans do. That's because the government takes an active role in the market. It caps how much pharmacies can legally charge Canadians for the medications, okay? Like migraine. Migraine medication costs less than a third of the lowest price at a U.S. pharmacy, okay? And yes, the state single-payer system, which is administered through the Canadian provinces, means that in some regions and for some kinds of health care, care might be lacking. Or you'll have to wait a long time for your elective surgery. If you want an MRI tomorrow, odds are it's not going to happen, okay? Unless it's an emergency. Of course you'll get care if it's an emergency, okay? But on the plus side, when it's your turn to have that MRI or that surgery, guess what? You won't be billed for it. You won't be billed for it, okay? At all, okay? Now, I can personally vouch for the accuracy of this story. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. I have two cousins who live in Canada. My cousin in Nova Scotia, he had an accident, tripped on some black ice, twisted his leg, tore some ligaments. He spent, a week or two in a hospital. And very good care. You know what his final bill was, folks? $0. $0. Okay. So that's what you get when you pay a little more taxes, but after that, you don't have much else to pay, okay? Here we have what? Here we got the co-pays and premiums and deductibles, It's all money, folks. Whether you call it a tax or you call it these other three things, co-pays, premiums, deductible, it's all money, and it comes out of your pocket. Okay? So, look, the takeaway of this story is that Americans are being scammed. You know, for sure, rich Canadians, no question about it, they come to the United States for their elective care, right? But I really doubt there is even one middle-class Canadian who would gladly swap their Canadian-style single-payer system for our for-profit healthcare system. That's the show for today, folks. Next week, we'll be talking about these three topics: Norway's family benefits, adjunct professors and poverty in America, and I'm going to be talking about Lee Atwater, a disgraced legacy. So, have a blessed day, and always remember, you deserve the government you vote for.